What's going on? Boys, today we are talking about addiction. Reasons why you shouldn't drink and reasons why I used to drink. One of the reasons I used to drink was consistency. I had no consistency in my life. I felt insecure and concerned all the time everything would fall apart. In alcohol, whenever I would drink, the effects were always the same. Prices almost never changed. The amount it would take to get me drunk almost never changed once I had that tolerance built in. So I always knew what to expect, and in an unstable environment, alcohol was a pillar I could rely on for consistency, for stability. And alcohol ended up being a sort of person in my life. At the time when I started, I had nobody I could turn to, nobody I trusted, nobody I could relax around. The few people I tried to relax around, feel comfortable around, were inconsistent, unstable, or our friendships or relationships were equally unstable or generally unhappy. Whereas alcohol, for me, was always the same. If I had a bad day, I had a hard day. I used to work in a printing press, and I felt like crying or something, and I couldn't speak with anyone, I would drink. And that's another thing. Alcohol, for me, was an emotions regulator or venter. Tears, for me, are involuntary. Meaning, if I'm feeling just destroyed, typically I won't be able to cry. But if I see something even a little bit sad in a show or a game or something, then the waterworks start up. And it leads to emotional constipation. Or there would be emotional diarrhea or vomit when I would get around people and I would try to talk about the things I wanted to talk about. And the moment I started speaking with them, I would just break down. So, alcohol was the thing I could turn to calm those emotions, then let them out alone and have a degree of consistent control over them. And the reason I say alcohol was a person was because it was. In my view, friendships and relationships are founded on happy or comfortable routine. Alcohol became my routine, not just for emotional troubles, but at the end of every day, alcohol was something consistent, scheduled, ritualized, routinized, I could turn to. Instead of going to a person to relax, I would go to alcohol. It stimulated my emotions, it stimulated my sensations. Everything sounds and feels better when you're drunk. It was, in effect, a person. It handled everything I needed. That's exactly why dependence creeps in. If this substance handles everything a person could handle better because it's consistent, especially considering at the time, even now really, people I try to consist with are not consistent, why would you turn to anything else? Then, once alcohol's negative effects creep in, you have nothing else to turn to because you are so dependent on this one thing for all your needs. You end up in liquor stores around these zombied out 50 and 60 somethings, and you see yourself as them or with them, and you realize what you're in and you can't get out of it. Or you reach a point in your alcoholic career alcohol stops accentuating the things you like and starts barring you from the things you like. And you want to go back to enjoying the things you used to like, but now you can't because you're reliant, because you need the substance to handle so many aspects of who you are as a person. And it doesn't just handle those aspects of who you are as a person, it becomes who you are as a person. When I was drinking all the time, I had no identity issues because alcohol was my identity. Everything I was struggling with, or at least in the ways I was struggling with those things, became alcohol things. Or the things I enjoyed all became alcohol things. The need for the substance and the reasons I needed it and the effects of the substance were who I was. So you become it. So it stops just handling things and it becomes who you are. This video's messy, but I will link a song in the description that explains the sort of figure alcohol becomes in your life. It is a real person. It is the only thing you can rely on. It's the only thing you can feel safe with. It's the only semblance of consistency and stability you have, which in hindsight, or an outsider's perspective, alcohol being a pillar of consistency, something's wrong there. There are reasons for why it's wrong or why you ended up in that situation, but it's like trying to put out fire with fire. Another reason I drank and why you shouldn't drink is the void. When you feel overwhelmed, it's easy to turn to alcohol because it turns your brain off. It forces you outside of your body and into the present. Or outside of your head and into the present, rather. So you can't worry about the future, really. I mean, you can, but it's not going to have... You drink enough, it's not going to stick. And all the problems you're dealing with, you can't think about because your brain is so scrambled, you just can't think about them. Well, there are a number of issues with that, but the main issue on a personal level with slipping into that void is eventually you drink long enough, it stops being foggy. In the sense, it no longer acts as an escape. Eventually that cloud of out of your headedness crystallizes into a lens and you get to look at your life from... It's a hands-on perspective, but it's also kind of a hands-off perspective. But regardless of how that lens looks, it's a negative one. Because alcohol is a depressant. You drink it because you're trying not to think about the depressing things, but eventually it fills a hole in your life a little while, then acts as acid and makes that hole even bigger. And then it shows you that. It goes from, man, it feels nice not to need to think about anything, to you have absolutely nothing to think about. You have absolutely nothing to look forward to or hope for. All you have to live for are the problems you're running away from. There's nothing brighter in the future. All you have is the misery you're running from. And then that becomes the place you go to every single time you drink. It's a clear view of your situation, but it will be slanted for the negative because that's what the substance does. And if you drink long enough, that's hard to get out of because that's who you are. That's what you depend on just to function. So that lens of nothing will ever get better. All you have is hurt, and that's it. That becomes your permanent perspective, because you can't imagine a life without drinking, but you can't imagine a life dealing with the things you're dealing with because even though that's all you have, and even though alcohol makes you feel even worse about the things you're running from, when you're addicted that way, that pained detachment is all you think you have. Or at least it's the only thing you can turn to. Because you know how hard it is to find reasons to live, things to be happy about? Just normally, with no substances in your life. It is infinitely harder to take advantage of opportunities as they arise when you are addicted. So, you already won't get many opportunities in the first place, and those opportunities almost never will stick. But if you're addicted, they will never stick. Ever. Even if you could control yourself completely drunk, which you can't, people will look at you differently. People will treat you differently when they realize you're drinking all the time. Stigmas about everything are hard to shake. Alcoholism is an impossible stigma to shake. It will prevent opportunities from showing up in the first place, and if you that do show up, you won't be able to take advantage of, or people will look at you so negatively, you won't be able to do anything with it. With them, the opportunities. And you can't control yourself because of blackouts and the depressant effects. So blackouts are weird. I was an alcoholic for a couple years, and I never knew the degree to which blackouts blank your mind. I would always have moments of remembering things that happened the night before, but there were moments of things just absolutely not lining up. And I realized there's always a point. You drink so much, you actually cannot remember things you did. And you won't realize that because you don't realize or can't remember the things you did. You'll have these moments you realize you had absolutely no control or recall over anything that happened. And that's terrifying once you realize that's what's happening. Now, when I was in my alcoholic phase, I would almost exclusively drink alone, so I didn't feel the effects of things that would happen. But the issue is you have absolutely no control over yourself. So even if you are drinking alone, what's to say you don't, in your blackout, leave your home? There was an instance I retraced my footsteps and realized I had gone outside and walked around in the middle of the night blackout drunk, and I could not remember it. There was dirt leading from my door to my bed. It's freaky. You can't afford not to have absolute control over yourself at all times. You especially cannot afford to have absolutely no control over yourself at all times. It's a recipe for disaster, and it's a ticking time bomb. You can't afford it. Then, in regards to lack of control with the depressant effects, we already sort of talked about it in the sense it controls the way you look at things. But for me, as I said, I used alcohol to regulate my emotions. Eventually, that reaches a point you have absolutely no control over your emotions. You have absolutely no control over the things that frame your entire existence. And if you are a crybag like I am with alcohol, it eventually creates an absolute sense of no way out. And because your emotions have such control over you in that state, that's all you can fixate on. It's just negative and nasty, and it is, your fields are salted. Nothing can grow at that point, even if you tried. That ties back into the opportunities, but when you are in that negative and consistent an emotional state, you can't be anything except crying all the time. The last thing we'll talk about is the hole alcohol creates. So I mentioned, if you're drinking, if you're an alcoholic, you're probably drinking to fill a hole in your life. So alcohol fills that hole for a while, then it eats away at the edges until that hole is even bigger. All this stuff ties together. This ties back into opportunities. If you were drinking because of a problem in your life, not only are you not solving the problem, you're making it worse, probably in irreparable ways. Meaning, even if you were to stop drinking, now you have to deal with an even worse problem. And you couldn't fill the hole before, right? When you had all the opportunities, all the mental clarity, all the control, all everything, you still couldn't fill that hole. Now you have to deal with the fact the problem is even worse and you can't fix it. I'm of the mind you can't fix things even if you try. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. But if you want already impossible problems not to get even more impossible, you shouldn't drink and let the substance make those problems worse and worse and worse. Because you're already not going to fix them. You really can't deal with something that you'll never fix, that you let get even more out of hand. The reason I'm talking about all this is I drank a six-pack a couple days ago and was reminded of all the reasons drinking is awful. The last few months I have been stuck in a series of lose-lose situations. You either do absolutely nothing, throw up your hands, and lose, or you work very, very hard and still lose. What you're deciding is how badly you want to lose. Things are going to get worse, regardless of what you do, but if you want to lose a little less, you have to lose your mind. That culminated with being temporarily separated from the financial security net I've been building. And in this temporary period, I'm looking at losing some things. They aren't big things, but everything is about precedent, right? If it happens once, it will happen again. It can happen again. There are a million different ways this similar situation can creep up on you and attack you in ways you haven't prepared for, and when they happen those times, they'll be even worse. So, it culminated with the realization not only is my safety net not safe, but also in the future, it'll be even worse. And no amount of preparation will prevent that. So I drank a six-pack because not drinking had been gnawing at me enough. University people all drink. They drink and they drink and they drink. So you either drink to fit in, which I did a little bit. I tried to moderate it. I'm just qualifying myself here, right? And then I saw the bad things that were happening, so I cut it off, and I cut it off hard. But it kept gnawing at me because of the social isolation, because of, again, the realization things don't get better, things only get harder. And you will be stuck permanently drowning, essentially. And I just said fuck it and got a six-pack. So what I realized while I was drinking it was, I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, consistency. Alcohol is consistent. Alcohol is exactly the way I remember it. Exactly the way I remember it. And it was a weird realization. It was like so alcohol typically gives you 1 degree of separation from your mind. This was 2 degrees of separation from your mind to outside it, then to outside the outside it. I fell into the exact same trappings I would normally do drinking, meaning just trying to read manga or something and not being able to focus on it. Thinking about posting online, not realizing how bad that would be, which we'll get to that. Then wanting to talk to people who don't care about what's going on, and all of that wrapping up in this really won't get better. What you're dealing with really is all you're ever going to deal with until you die. And you don't know for certain whether or not there's even respite afterward. Now, fortunately, because alcohol is so consistent, I was able not to waste my time on stuff I couldn't focus on. I was able not to post online. I was able not to talk about what was going on with people who don't care. And I was able to notice the negative thinking patterns creeping in. And I remembered all the reasons I don't like drinking. I don't like the gnawing feeling. I don't like the depression of it. I don't like the no way out feeling. No way out feelings are already bad enough on the day-to-day. They get so much worse when you're spat out of your head directly into them. Essentially, all the reasons I used to turn to alcohol now are reasons to stay away from alcohol. And even knowing that, and during my dry stretches of drinking absolutely nothing, which I've been on recently, it's still not the craving still gnaws at you. You know it's not good on any level, and for some reason your body just still wants it. And I don't get it. But making this video to say, don't drink. It's a bad idea for all the reasons I listed. Dependence, losing your identity, losing control on a bunch of different levels, losing opportunities, losing things you have, then being unable to take advantage of new opportunities or generate new things, and all you're doing is making a bad situation that won't get better even worse, and you won't be able to make that better. In summary, don't drink. Also, it will fuck up your sleeping patterns to the point, another level of dependence, you won't be able to sleep without drinking. So many reasons not to drink. Just stay away from it and don't develop an addiction if you've never developed an addiction. And if you are addicted, force yourself to stop. It's hard, but you can do it. I'll link another video in the description with a timestamp of an INTP comedian who's dead now, who dealt with addiction his whole life. And it'll sound really similar for quite a few of you, right? Straight-laced, trying to get good grades, trying to impress your family or meet your family's expectations, trying to make every right decision, then falling into substances. Just don't do it. Song in the description, video in the description. Don't drink. Like if you enjoyed, because it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you haven't, because we do this shit sometimes. And comment your thoughts, because I love hearing from you. Any of you guys have crazy addictions you're trying to kick, or you are in? If you're in them, why are you in them, and how are they affecting you? I've been using Kratom to avoid the alcohol cravings, and that works most of the time. But sometimes the more bad things happen, and the more those cravings kick up, the harder it is to stay away. If you're gonna slip, don't make it a big slip, please. But thanks again for watching, everybody. Really, we have a lot of fun on this channel. So much fun, in fact, you could be carrying it. And it's just a heavy, whole lot of fun, and then trip and fall down a flight of stairs. Because the fun is so heavy. But that's how much fun we have on this channel, and I look forward to doing this with you guys again in the future.